when am I taking the training wheels off, and you fall, or your bike continues to stay upright?
What a way to differentiate yourself from anybody else in the market. I don't care what market you're in. People aren't doing that
No,
shit.
don't stop developing the skills you got.
Welcome back for another episode of the Mission Control Podcast with Mike Stearns, brought to you by Ascend Digital Agency and by our great sponsors over at Roofer. If you need instant roof measurements, clean proposals that are so pristine that you'll give your prospects no choice but to buy from you, hit up Roofer. John Senac. What's up, homie?
Not much. You doing all right?
All right. I'm doing all right. I've got it's been a week already, but I woke up today and I'm like, I've got this amazing fucking hat from my guy over at NTS, so I'm going to put that hat on and we're going to get after it. So that's been great. Thank you for the hat, and thank you for coming, man. I really appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for the invite. It's always such a privilege to be able to just sit and chat and share information and tell stories, and to think that may do something for somebody is just a humbling thought for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's like, even if you're talking to 1,000 people, which you probably won't be yet on this podcast, but if you can reach one and make even the smallest difference, it's a huge dub for the crew, right?
It is. There was a local roofer one time that was like, "Hey, did I hear you're going to be on?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Man, you made it." Everybody's perception is the thing that they watch, the thing that they do. Like, if that's the one that they're hooked to and that's the one they're committed to and that's the thing that they watch, whether it's one, two, or three of them, like, they tend to stay dedicated to that brand or that line or that podcast or that channel or whatever it may be. And I appreciate those opportunities. It really does. It makes a difference.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I'm sure a lot of folks that are watching know what you do, but let's assume some of them don't. So what is NTS?
NTS started as a concept to name that shingle, and it's really intended to be surface, like the physical surface of the exterior of the home, because there are other surfaces that we're adding. But we're a unbiased shingle reporting for right now, where we take in a sample, we analyze what it is, we report what it is, and any of the relevant factors. One thing that we've done is we've helped save the steps of the next question. So you identify what it is, but maybe there's documents or letters or information about that product available out on the market. And instead of having to call the supplier or the manufacturer or anybody chase those down, we try and pile all those together. So it's an objective report, whether a shingle's available, and then if there's any compatibility issues from the manufacturer, what are those documents and letters to state those things? And that, in its short, is what it is.
Gotcha. Very interesting. So what inspired this path for you?
That's a great question. So everybody watching should know that I'm just some homeschool kid from Indiana who geeked out about shingles when I was selling and installing, figured out that there was a lot of discontinued products, leveraged that in my selling process, and eventually realized that there's only one giant 800-pound gorilla cornering the market in identification and reporting on these products, and there's room for some disruption and some market entry. And myself and a business partner decided to enter and disrupt the market. And we've experienced the joys and the burdens of what disrupting a market looks like in that regards, because there's plenty of challenges when you piss off an 800-pound gorilla and all the people who trust an 800-pound gorilla. There's burdens that come along with that too, but there's been some great joys that have come along with that as well. But again, I'm just some homeschool kid who figured out how to talk to people, install some stuff, sell some stuff, and then geeked out on the data. And we live in such a data-driven society that has proven to be a very powerful thing for you to know the data behind shingles.
Yeah, data. I'm a big data guy. My audience is probably tired of hearing me say that shit. But
drive it home.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you make database decisions, it's really challenging for bias to be introduced. And obviously, you can frame data a certain way to have influence the perception of it. But at the end of the day, like if you're analyzing data, the data's the data. So that it becomes much tougher to tell a different story looking at objective numbers, right? I like that. So for somebody who's like, and I've heard this time and time again, in I guess a different context, but a shingle's a shingle. We're all selling the same thing, right? It's an architectural shingle, and it's going to last 15 to 20 years. I would imagine, given the nature of what you do, you may have maybe a slightly different outlook on that, or maybe you don't. Maybe is it safe for me to assume that's the case? If so,
it
why
is.
or
But
why
remember, since I'm such a data-driven person and a detail person that I know all those specs and measurements, there's a lot of different things that I don't think all shingles are equal, but the minutia separating them is pretty slight. The shingles cover a mass of the United States. It's on more residential roofs than any other surface. It is the most cost-effective thing for a homeowner to replace their roof with. It buys a reasonable amount of time to cover your most people's largest asset with a certain level of look, aesthetics, algae resistance, trust, wind resistance, hail resistance, whatever it's got, right? So what is the thing that's interesting to you as a homeowner? And that's what people should be buying. So for me, I live in an area that gives you a pretty good deal, and I mean a really good deal on a hail impact resistant shingle on my homeowner's premium. I figured out the ROI on that shingle would be 5 years. The upper investment for me to add a hail impact resistant shingle, I'd get that back as long as I lived in this home for 5 years. So when we bought this home a year ago, we went with that. And it's going to save me about $420 a month. Or $420 a year, sorry, a year. $420 a month would be awesome. $420 a year. So in 5 years' time, I will see my investment back. And then every year after that, I'm saving on my homeowner's insurance because of that. And it gives me a little added protection. Maybe you live in a high wind zone. Maybe you live under a lot of trees, and algae resistance is the most important thing. Everyone has a little bit different attributes that it's hard for me to say like that I have a favorite, but I do know the things that I think, in my opinion, each one of them has done really well or stood out a little bit different than the others.
That's a really good point. So you kind of looked at it like a math problem, right? Why don't you explain to the audience how you arrived at what it would take you to get your money back by investing into a hail impact or an impact resistant shingle?
So I only went to a class 3 instead of a class 4. Class 4 products are a little bit more expensive, and it was almost a $2,100 investment to make that difference from the architectural shingle that would have been normally presented and the class 3 product. So I was looking at a 2,100, like 21 and some change, right? So the 400 and some odd dollars that I'm making back on that in 5 years' times, I will almost break even. So it just took 400 times 5, $2,000, 400 and some change. It was almost $2,100. So technically it was going to be 5 years and 4 months if you did the math on a month-by-month basis to say that I broke even, which means as long as I own the house, past that point, I'm in good shape. But let's transfer this into selling strategies, right? And I think that this comes into
beat me there.
I think that this comes into how you're selling. If you're selling on a limited product knowledge, like if I'm selling because someone came into my office and said, here's the product that we have and this is what you guys sell and here's all the perks. I better know what the downsides are and I better know what the other perks are in the market. And then when I'm in front of my homeowner, I better be having a servant heart and listening to the things that are actually a concern to them. Pitching a product that they have no interest in and was never expressed as a true thing that they need or are concerned about or worried about, or when you pitch something and there's no engagement or interaction with that thing, probably doesn't matter to them. So pitching a hail impact resistant shingle for somebody who's going to see the ROI on that in 5 years and you haven't learned yet that, hey, we're actually selling the house because our kids just moved out of college. The whole reason we're replacing the roof is so we can put it on the market. Guess what's not interesting to them? ROI on a shingle. It is not interesting at all to that person, right? So when we shift the benefits of each shingle, the pro, the thing that they do best, the detail, the highest win rating, the best nailing pattern, the easiest install, the whatever it may be for that individual, you better have a servant's heart and ears of what's important to that homeowner. So you can then go, there could be 5 things that are great about the shingle that you're selling, right? If the only thing they're interested in is the fact that, look, this is the second roof we put on, the last 2 have blown off. All I care about is it going to stick when God blows the wind across the country and says, hey, we're going to try and take these things off. Okay, well, ours has the highest wind rating, or it has the longest lasting wind warranty before it starts depreciating, right? You can pitch all 5 attributes all you want, but you better be ready to shift the attributes that your homeowner needs into a true selling strategy for them to be able to understand why that shingle is beneficial and why that product is best for them, how it will benefit the service that they're looking for, the thing that they need the most, instead of just selling your pitch. Canned pitches are kind of an obsolete thing, in my opinion, right? A canned pitch is almost a risk of a no close. So your rapport and your learning about that homeowner, learning about that customer going into it is going to be valuable when it comes to say, and this is why I think this is the best shingle for you, because you've told me you were really frustrated that your 10-year-old roof blew off so fast. This one's wind warranty doesn't even depreciate until 15 years, right? You better be able to say things like that. This is your 3rd hail claim. Well, let's give you a product that isn't going to put you at risk for a hail claim. You're covered in trees and you hate the moss look. Most shingles only warrant against 1 strand of algae. This one does 3, and it has the longest time frame, right? If you're not ready to go in and pitch those things because you're paying attention to your homeowner, you're can pitching, and someone with a catered pitch instead of a can pitch will outpitch you.
That's an amazing point. I was talking with Chuck Allen from Rio Blanco Roofing on his podcast of mine, and I had asked the question, like, how important is a script to sales? And like, for me, I think it's really important because a lot of the times you're going to have your 10% of salespeople that produce 80% of the volume or whatever that stat is, right? It's a small percentage does a lot. But I feel like a lot of people, as far as training and developing, they need like a baseline to go off of, and then they should be weaned off of that pitch into something that's more customizable, more catered, less canned. It should just be a baseline of knowledge to get the learning curve out of the way. What are your thoughts on that?
So I call it a framework, right? Every company should have a framework of what selling looks like, right? How and when, the key what's that you present, and that you have a framework. And then a salesperson, like you said, you have those 10 to 20% of people that are going to produce. You're less worried about them. You're actually more worried that they're probably producing some headaches for you because the high volume and some over-promising or something like that. You're not worried about their pitch necessarily. And then you have another about 40 to 60% in that mid-grade that you need to be able to give them a framework, and then they get it enough to their own that they're producing somewhat consistently. They're not the top producers, but they're producing somewhat consistently. And more importantly, they're producing in a level that protects your brand as an owner, that they're out there and they're pitching things within the framework that they may have changed a little. They're able to listen and understand the customer's needs, but they're still operating within a decent realm of that framework. And then there's that last bottom 20%-ish that are probably people that are just happy doing the thing they do, or won't last, or just aren't fit for your model, your program, whatever it may be. But I do think I've always used the right framework. Same thing for you. Like script, framework, doesn't matter. I think there needs to be some level of operational framework and how a salesperson is going to pitch, because it kind of becomes the basis of how you'll train in the selling. So let's say you got somebody from, let's say you hired 5 new people, somebody from another roofing company, somebody from the restaurant, somebody from cars, and 2 people right out of high school, never sold a thing in their life, right? They all need to have the same framework to start, but they're all going to end up having slightly different selling approaches, slightly different pitches, slightly different attention to detail on the homeowner, going through that. But the framework has to be there, so there's some basis of how they sell.
Yeah, another great point. When I'm thinking about it, so we've broke it down into, say, 3 tiers of productivity as far as salespeople are concerned, right? And maybe some people say there's 2, maybe some people say that's 5, but let's assume there's 3. I think that's a really good way to break that down.
Common layers is 3.
Yeah, yep. So if we're looking at starting 5 new sales reps, how quickly should we be weaning them off of that framework or that script or that introduction to the company, our process? These are the things that we value in the sales process. Should it be a month? Should it be 3 months? And how important is it to effectively manage those people?
So
to
my
help them
experience
along?
in training a lot of contractors across the country is somewhere between 60 and 90 days. You should have that vetted. And then there's somewhere between 2 to 6 closes that you have that vetted in, right? If they're 2 to 6 closes in, they should be weaning off of that framework. If 60 to 90 days, they should be weaning off of that. So some people do it off time. Some people do it off of transactions. And I don't really have a preference which it is, but I do think every owner needs to know their stopping point. Like, when am I done trying to press this? When am I taking the training wheels off, and you fall, or your bike continues to stay upright? Now, you may go blazing speed, but as long as your bike stays upright, I don't care if you're pacing or blazing speed, but the training wheels are coming off. And like you said, the 3 categories: you're falling, you're coasting, or you're cruising. Like, there's a few things that are going to happen at that point, but in general, I think 2 to 6 transactional sales moments for the salesperson, or 60 to 90 days, because there are some things going on in the background where they need to learn roof and damage and terms. And, there's so many skill pieces we're trying to implement in the early end that I think there's going to be a lot of variation, but that's the most consistent thing I see. And by the way, this is kind of a fun conversation. Do you know how little I get to talk about sales anymore?
I fucking love sales. So
that's great, because I'm like, I show up at like roofing things, or I teach classes and stuff, and everybody walks up to me with a picture of a shingle or something like that and wants to know what it is, or have you ever seen this before, and stuff like that. And I love it. I love it that people like instantly come to me for that. But then every now and then I get to teach on operations, or I get to teach on process, or I get to get on a podcast and talk sales, and I'm like, cool. I mean, y'all, I sold $2 to $3 million a year for like 5 years straight in a shingle heavy market. I know how to sell, and I love selling. And my very first training program was geared around selling, and I just don't ever get to talk sales that much anymore.
Well, you're welcome.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So what do you see as far as like the biggest misstep or oversight at the company level, as far as like bringing on training, recruiting, whatever that looks like, as far as developing a sales team, and then at the rep level, as far as getting in the way of them being productive?
Oh boy, that's a good question. So the missing piece from a company standpoint is, I think, good training on referrals. I think the sooner people understand the value of referrals and how to put that in their framework of selling is helpful. And I know there's so many other things, like every company's a little bit, I've seen a lot of really, really great programs, and I've seen a lot of really atrocious programs as far as sales training goes, built within companies. And to be fair, those are people who are trying to improve. I've seen those programs. They're living models, and they're growing. But so much of my business was built off referrals, and it's the easiest close, in my opinion. And here we are, we have people hunting for food, and instead of quickly training them, like, hey, here's the deal. We're gonna give you a rifle, and you're gonna go hunt for food, but we're gonna give you a whole bunch of other rifles, and you can give these to other people to hunt for food for you, or you could just covet these rifles and continue to hunt for your own food the entire time, right? And just stay in our selling framework. The sooner we get people to understand that there's an ask for referrals, and that decision-making starts changing at so many asks, and that applies to all of it. That applies to the ask for the roofing, the door knock, the impressions that they've had. It also applies to asking for referrals. And if you don't know how to ask for referrals, you're never going to grow that network of people who are out there selling for you, hunting for you, who took your rifle and said, hey, we're going to take the shot too and give you some food. And I think that that's missing from most front-end programs. It will give your salespersons successes that they weren't prepared for and help them stay in the model because they're experiencing success from good referral programs. The bad part is most companies, and I know I haven't even got to the second question yet, most companies who quote unquote have a referral program don't have training on how to get referrals. They just say, hey, look, if somebody refers somebody and they have damage and they file a claim and their claim gets fully approved and they sign up for a roof and they made it through all 5 of those hoops of fire, guess what? We'll give them a chintzy, shitty little $250 gift card for jumping through all those hoops of fire. Nobody's trying to jump through those hoops of fire. They need programs that that reward people instantly. So you quickly identify the people that are willing to refer, and then you can build longer programs and more higher pay programs for those referrals. So I do think the company's referral programs are a little bit restricting. So there's not enough training going on how to get referrals, and the programs of how we pay referrals are a little bit restrictive. I think that's one thing that's missing on the company side of things. All right. And your second question was, what's missing on the rep side? What was the second question there?
Yeah, what do you see as far as like a misstep on the rep side that, whether they can't get out of their own way or they hamstring their ability to grow as a salesperson?
So one thing that reps don't know about themselves, most reps don't know about themselves, is that everything as a company, you're probably being evaluated on skill and drive. We can only motivate people so much. So as a rep, you don't see that. So as a rep, what we see is we see some results, and we like those results, and then we kind of forget to continue to develop skill because we've seen results. I'm where I'm at now because I was always hungry for more knowledge, more skill, more development, more growth, not just understanding the product I was selling, but understanding every product that I was competitively pitched against every single time, so I knew how to beat it. When you are new to sales and you're in that first 2 to 6 closes, you're in that first 90 days and you're starting to see success, you tend to be like success after success after success, and then we pull back the reins on skill development. Don't stop developing the skill as a rep, because your skill long-term will change you from somebody who's selling and coasting to somebody who's accelerating, because you just sound different. Your vernacular is different. Your knowledge is different. Your presentation is different because your skill set is so far superior to the person that you're competing against that it's just not even competition anymore. I talk circles around the people, but you know what? Only when I have to. And that's the weird thing about skill is it's kind of low reward. If you're listening to the thing you need and you're pitching to these homeowners, and most of them need a lot of the same things, you're developing skill and you're only tapping into it so much. But then when you do need to tap into it for competitive reasons, or you do need to tap into it for the person that's got a ton of questions, you have it instead of not having it. So because there's not a driving force, because you're closing deals, most salespersons slow down the skill development. Don't stop developing the skill if you want to be top tier in this industry.
That's fucking amazing advice, dude. And I've seriously, because I've been in a lot of different sales environments. I've done sales. I did pretty well in sales, and I helped coach with some sales. And it's like you couldn't be more spot on. And a lot of people will say like product knowledge doesn't matter, or there's like a spectrum of how much people care about product. But if, like you said, even if you only pull it out 7% of the time or 3% of the times, the way for you to tactfully and so eloquently dismantle any type of objection having to do with a competing product and be able to substantiate your recommendation based off those reasons, I mean, that's a fucking layup, right?
Here's some good examples for every salesperson listening. When I realized how to talk about roof decking within a claim and where roof decking could potentially get approved in a claim, I went from 1 roof deck the year prior to 9 roof decks the next year. Every roof deck I had approved was over $6,000. Okay. Now that means I added, right? If you just took that, roughly $60,000 to my overall sales that year, just on a new skill. Didn't have to go get more leads, just on a new skill. So if my skill can add little things like that, what if you had 2 or 3 new skills that closed $60,000 and you found yourself $250,000 that was added to your current process because of skill set and skill development? Ventilation calculations. I learned how to get those and how to get the carriers to approve intake vents and exhaust vents being cut out because there wasn't enough ventilation on the roof, right? Because I learned a skill. I learned more about the assembly. I learned more about the products and the build and the construction and how it's all put together. And then here's the real kicker. You start layering all those things together, here's where the money really pays off on that. When you go out to bid one for an apartment complex or a property group and you're the skill guy, not the sales guy, the trusted guy, not the sales guy, the problem solver, not the sales guy, you now just sold a long-term relationship because you solved the problem, you were educated, you out-talked the other person with your skill, and you will close that deal eventually because they are, was it like 60% more likely to use the person that's already doing their service and maintenance for the roof replacement. So you listen for the service, you have the skill to talk about it, and then those HOAs, those property groups, those apartment complexes, You just outskilled that person because you trickled in skill throughout the entire time that added 50,000 to your total sales, 100,000 to your total sales. And after you added $250,000, you realize, like, guess what? I just added another $500,000 because I knew how to go close an HOA, because I had every skill to outtalk every freaking person that walked on that thing. It is a incremental step. And it does. It only affects, like you said, 3, 7, 10% of the ones you handle transactionally. But what does it do long run? It crushes. It absolutely crushes.
Yeah. I love that shit. Honestly, dude, I seriously do. So let's go back to the first question, which I was with A. Fricker Roofing this morning. He's got an amazing team. They're doing so fantastic. His year-over-year growth out of Tulsa is fucking obscene. And he brought me in to train them on what I talked about at actually the roofing ahead of the curve when I presented there, as far as like using social media and leveraging that for your brand to get referrals from people that are looking for your services. And it's within community groups, and it's inviting people into your ecosystem on Facebook. So if you're in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and you're servicing people in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, like, why aren't they in there? Everyone agreed that, you know, you work for the best roofing company, but why is it when I go into this community group, I don't see A. Fricker mentioned once when somebody's asking for a roof? And we actually pulled up in this group the post, and then a week and a half later, the guy wrote an endorsement within that group for the company he ended up choosing based off who was tagged in that post, giving them a review about how great of a job they did, right? So within 2 weeks' time, he posted, read the recommendations of companies that were tagged, bought the roof, had the roof put on, and then left a review, right?
God.
And it worked. But here's the thing. In every sales position I've ever been in, the asking for the referral, the most important part, right, to start that process, is overlooked so often. And there's a paradox there, because people that are doing sales are typically competitive. And guys, I don't mean to be disparaging the salespeople. A lot of them want to take the easiest way to the money, right? Like, you don't want to go chase down a mammoth from 4,000 yards away when you've got an elephant sitting right in front of you. Just shoot the elephant and eat, right? So it's like, if you can turn this person into a brand ambassador and you can leverage those communities to get more business in a very easy way, like, why aren't you doing it? And a lot of the times it's not intuitive, or it's setting up a process. Fucking processes cure a lot of things, man.
Process guru. So you said brand ambassadors. I want everybody to understand what that looks like. In 2021, I had a gentleman in 2020, year of COVID, I had a gentleman who sent me 9 referrals. 6 of them qualified. 6. Now, I will take somebody hunting for food for me, giving me 50% success. Somebody who's giving me 66% success, I am above and beyond. And just throw a number. What do you think I gave him in incentives in that year?
$250 a roof.
$180 bottle of bourbon, another $200 bottle of bourbon, $100 gift card for him and his wife to go to dinner at the restaurant that I knew was their favorite because they told me during the selling process. And then I gave them each separate gift cards for places that they like to go to lunch. And by the end of the year, I gave them a big thank you. Total all in, I think I spent about $1,200. Okay. So the math of about $250 referral still came out to be pretty close. But I got them started by giving them a very, very low pay to say, hey, could you put me in contact with just 2 people for $25 each, 2 people? So I risked $50, and I developed somebody who truly became a brand ambassador, because when they saw the thank you start rolling in, as they finished off that last bottle of whiskey, as they finished off dinner at that restaurant that they liked and used the gift card that I gave them, they were like, I bet I can get another one of these. Who else can I send John's way, right? Because they knew that was going to happen, but it didn't happen by them jumping through 6 hoops of fire. It happened by me taking the risk, not them. I'm asking for the referral. Who should take the risk? Not the homeowner, not the individual who, right? And you're right. Why chase the mammoth when there's an elephant right in front of you? Okay. The path of least resistance is the most valuable path. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So if I've got a straight line from me to Mark to Susan, and Mark can get me to Susan, why am I not asking Mark for Susan? Why would I want to go then send mailers or hunt them down or go door knock and do everything else when Mark can get me straight to Susan? Let's take straight line paths to people. So I don't think it's lazy. I think an edge. It's a step above what most people are doing in the market. And that referral process and them understanding how and when and how many times to, and to start doing that early will be a success multiplier. And again, think of that phrase. I love that phrase, brand ambassadors. If you think of people like brand ambassadors, it's amazing. Some people actually end up being that and treating you like that. There are people that were so dedicated. One of my peers for a while, Alex, came from cars, really understood the process of asking for referrals. And he had people that were such good brand ambassadors. He'd call them up and be like, hey, Joe, I'm like 2 people from hitting my numbers this month. Do you have somebody you can give me? And that person was willing to give him a name because he became such an ambassador for Alex in that process. They do. There's a certain level of trust that can get developed. Not every one of them. Not every one of them is going to send you 6. But he had enough relationship with that person to be like, man, I'm like 2 from hitting my numbers this month. Oh, sure. Let me give you a couple people. One time he put him on a golf cart and drove him around the neighborhood. I'm like, I mean, talk about like a brand ambassador. The dude's driving around his golf cart with you on the golf cart. He sent me a picture of him on the golf cart. And I was like, hey, you've outdone me on referrals now, buddy. You got this guy to drive you around on a golf cart to ask for referrals.
Well, think about how hard it is to find people that legitimately care about what they're doing. Like they actually care, and it shows in the way that they conduct themselves and they conduct their business. So, like, let's take it in the example that you're talking about. Like, you paid attention not only to the information that you needed to leverage to close the deal initially, but you kept with you important details because you gave a shit of what restaurant do they like to eat at? What kind of bourbon does this guy like, right? So now on the follow-up, what I'm going to feel when I receive my favorite bottle of bourbon from you, to know that not only were you asking questions to close me, but you actually fucking remembered and you went and took that extra step just to go above and beyond. 100. You want to talk about like buying the girl a drink at a bar to be able to have the conversation initially and open the door. Just say, I just want to talk, right? That norm of reciprocity, like that's that shit to the nth degree, right? Like understanding situationally that like, hey, this dude likes this, I'm going to send him this. Just not many people give a shit enough about what they do to do that, if I'm being honest.
It is, but let's take your analogy right there, okay? Would you rather call over the bartender and say, hey, can you order her another drink on me? Or buy shots and then show up with the shot of your choice? Or how about this approach? I call over the bartender and I'm like, hey, it looks like an appletini down there. Am I correct? It's actually a caramel appletini. Cool. Glad I didn't just order it based on what I thought. I'm glad I did a little bit of research. I'm glad I learned, right? Because if I then walk up to that person and go, hey, do you mind if I order you another caramel appletini and sit and chat for a minute? I'm getting ready to order myself another drink. That hits differently than the bartender saying that guy bought you a drink. That hits differently than walking up with shots, because it shows that you took time to learn just that little bit. I remember I showed up at a customer's house, and I showed up. I can literally tell this educated guest Cabernet. Okay, it's not that expensive. It's about a $40 bottle of Cabernet. Educated guest. Okay, I showed up with that bottle, and I handed it to him and his wife and said, "Hey, I know we're going to be starting next week. I just wanted you guys to have this as a thank you. I really look forward to it. I'd love to talk with more of your neighbors. I really want to give them a warning that your project, it was a cedar shake project. I was like, I really want to give them a warning that your project can take multiple days. It is going to be noisy. Have you talked to any of them to give them a heads up? Oh yeah, we actually have. I was like, did you by chance mention me? Or I'd love to look at more of them. They're like, we didn't even think about that, but we totally could. Right. And then I remember when I handed them the bottle again and they pulled it out of the bag, the lady was like, this is Mike's favorite wine. Because I saw it on the counter when I was sitting in their house signing the deal, and I saw that bottle. All I did was buy the repeat bottle. Lo and behold, it happened to be literally the guy's favorite Cabernet.
Mm-hmm. It's the small things, man. Being situationally aware, right? Like, you probably could have closed that deal without seeing that bottle, right? But just being aware of your surroundings, and then, using that information just to have, make a kind gesture to somebody that you're appreciative for allowing you to help them. I mean, again, it's the little things. They go such a long way. And it's what a way to differentiate yourself from anybody else in the market. I don't care what market you're in. People aren't doing that shit.
No. Imagine if an owner, once their salesperson signed their first deal, right? They're in that first set of deals or in that first 60 to 90 days, whatever, walked up and handed the the salesperson $100 in gift cards in $10 increments or $25 increments and said, hey, now I want to teach you how to ask for referrals, and said, now in your next transactions, I want you to ask for referrals, and here's how you'll ask for them. I'll take the risk the first time, then you'll take it moving forward. Here's $100 of gift cards. Let me know who you hand them out to so we can track where they come from, right? To make sure the guy's not just spending them, right? And take that risk. Imagine if an owner did that to somebody early in their selling process, and that person learned after their first 1 or 2 transactions how to go ask for referrals. What kind of potential success that would be for that individual? It'd be a lot for a very, very low risk.
Yeah, man. And again, it's overlooked by so many. A lot of the times that's, you know what, we need more opportunities. Let's throw more money at it. And like, that's fine. Like, that's one way to solve it. But if you talk about like trying to be efficient, run lean. And I talked about it with Joseph Hughes the other day. It's like, you know, when, you know, you're going to have ad campaigns on Google or Facebook or wherever you're doing, and there's going to be ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. I don't give a shit who's running them. Even if Ascend Digital's running them, it's going to happen. So to have a pipeline of referrals consistently coming in to help foster the growth that you want, especially when your other shit isn't hitting optimally, right? Like, especially right now, like today, we're what, November 22nd? We just had an election. The weather's getting shitty. Inflation's really high. People aren't super excited about buying that fucking new roof. I'm telling you right now, especially in a retail environment, right? So, you know, so it's like now is the time, but to start now, you're usually not going to see that benefit right away. In sales, you got to keep a pipeline because it takes a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, 4 months to come to fruition sometimes, right? So don't wait until you need it to start. Like you said, the opportunity cost is so low and the benefit is through the fucking
Imagine
roof.
if right now
Unintended.
you went to your local candle shop or a commercial candle shop, doesn't matter. Local would be better. And you bought a dozen candles. And then you printed your own stickers that said, thank you for letting me do your project, blah, 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 and had your contact information on there. And then you printed a different color sticker that said, you know, a different color label that you put on that one. Same sticker, right? Something that's just an ad sticker that says, you know, this candle is, you know, brought to you by blah, whatever your roofing company is. And then a little label on that one, the second one, you hang a little label on it that says a gift for a friend during the holidays, right? And when you bring those 2 candles to your homeowner that you already did the project for right now, when snow's hitting, when things are slowing down, when money's tight, when people are buying Christmas gifts and stuff like that, I tell them this. I'd be like, hey, you know, Mark, I really appreciate doing a project there. I just want to drop by. It's not much. Just want to drop by a little gift and say thank you. I appreciate you keeping me in your thoughts. If anybody has a future project, so much that I actually have a second candle here. This one you can keep wrapped, and you can give it to a friend or a referral or a potential referral, somebody who may need their roof checked. So worst case scenario, you've got one of those gifts that if you can hand off if somebody just kind of shows up on a surprise or unannounced, right? And first of all, does anybody show up unannounced anymore? Like when we were kids, that was a thing. I think with cell phones, like even that quick text. But regardless, let's say they only gave you that quick text. You've got that. Or you've got a holiday party, or you show up and like, hey, we've got that thing tonight. I forgot to grab something. You've got a little candle that you can keep in a bag, and they can give it away, and it could potentially lead to a referral. If they think of someone right away, they're like, oh, cool, I'm going to give this candle to one of my friends, because then guess what? Now you've got something that's burned in their house. It smells like, ideally they like the smell of it, but it's a constant reminder of the fact that John gave them that candle, okay? And remember, not everything works. Not like it's just you try it a couple times, a few times, get enough to see if it works. But to really drive that point home, I remember I walked into a homeowner's house, and one of the things we do as salespersons, we always like compliment something or acknowledge something, right? Try to engage in conversation. And they had stained concrete floors, and I was like, what unique floors. These are awesome. And you can hear the wife from the kitchen go, I fucking hate them. It's just like, well, that may not have been the good talking point to start with. Right. So just don't expect everything to be so well received when you have these ideas and you drop off gifts or thank yous or referrals. May not be well received, right? But it was a great strategy to use around the holidays because you're farther away from their project. You're reminding them of how much you appreciated it. It makes it easier to tap them on the shoulder in the spring 3 months later when storms hit, because you didn't go from June all the way 9 months later till spring. You stop by in the holidays, you drop something by for them, even if you left it on their doorstep with a letter, right? You're kind of staying in constant contact with those brand ambassadors to continue to drive that point home, the referral point.
How frequently, let's say it's over an 8-month period, how frequently should you re-engage your past customers?
Past customers? So past customers being their roof is on, right? That's what we'll define past. I think that you should pick a core group of customers that either sent you referrals, were high value, or were in the areas you want to target. Okay, those are usually my leading factors. They already gave me referrals. We know the value of the claims around them, the homes around them, or they've already given me referrals. Okay. Or they're in the strategic neighborhoods I want to be in. That's the third one. I want to pick a handful of those people, and I want to maintain contact every quarter. Let's say I did that project in May, and there's not like an activity, a holiday, anything like that, another storm, anything like that. In the next quarter, I could be like, hey, drove by your house the other day to check out our new roof or to inspect your roof. I really think you did a great job picking out colors. I love that color, the color of the roof against your siding. Let me know if there's ever a question, if you guys have any needs, and I still would love to talk to some of your neighbors, right? Just touch them on hey, little tap. Hey, I'm still here. I'd love to give you another dinner gift card. I'd love to bring you this, or, whatever it may be. You can find ways to make contact with those individuals and remind them of the joy that they had in their project, right? All I did there was say, you picked a great color, and I'm reminding them of the what they liked in that project, right? That's really the main thing that I'm reminding them of. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. When I train people on that, like getting more reviews and things like that, I always tell them, like, it's not super sexy, like buying a roof, getting a new roof on. I'm like, but like if you can talk about all the good things afterwards, compliment how well it looks, right? And like if it's everything you envision and so much more, you can get them excited to some degree. And like you said, you're just kind of rehashing that by virtue of having a conversation. It's really not challenging if you just put a little thought behind it as far as like how you want to do it strategically, right?
But you got to be intentional about it, and I would try and stack like 4 or 5 of those, right? Or 10 of those, right? Trying to do it at random, you don't have a process, you don't have any approach to it, you're just kind of taking no aim, and you're firing when you do that. So if I stack like, hey, here's the neighborhoods I want to be in, plus 2 people that have already sent me referrals, I'm going to send emails out to these people, right? You stack those things, you're intentional about it, and I think that does make a big difference. And you're right, it's a very low time. The time it would take you to get in your truck and go knock 10 doors is way more strenuous than stacking up 10 of those that you're going to email. And door knocking's good, don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying door knocking.
Yeah, I feel bad because like a lot of times when I talk, it's like I'm talking about retail stuff and like versus door knocking. And I almost feel like people might think I'm discrediting it. It's fucking door knocking works, and it's a fucking tough gig, man. I've never done it personally, but
it is. But even from a retail standpoint, so you can go door knock from a retail standpoint and start developing what I call the lifetime customer, where you go out and you door knock, and you just want to give them that inspection right around 10 years, 12 years of their roof, because they're going to be in the market soon. They're going to be shopping soon, and you can do programs where you inspect it every year. You can do programs where you provide them a certain amount of maintenance or repairs for a set fee. You can pitch things to prolong the life of their roof, to get them further and further out before they have to replace it. There's a lot of retail knocks that exist out there. We tend to think of knocking across the industry as a restoration driven and a storm driven component, and it's really not, and it doesn't have to be. Do you think when people go knock alarms, they go knock the doors, they pull up a search history of every house that's been broken into and then go sell those people alarms? No, they're selling a proactive pitch, not a reactive pitch when they sell alarms. Right. Pest, right? They may or may not have a problem, but they're trying to sell something proactive, okay? Knocking a door for lawn services. You go knock a door for lawn services. Do you think the pitch is, hey, notice your lawn is shitty, we'd love to help you out, right? No, you're not pitching that. You're not pitching devastation and damage and loss and all those things in those pitches. You're pitching retail pitches. Solar's the same way. You're pitching retail style pitches on those things. And we get blinded by storm and storm damage when it comes to knocking in a storm environment and in a restoration environment, and fail to realize that, hey, guess what? That person has a roof. They're going to need to replace said roof at some point. And how can I be in front of them, capture their attention, be their guy, be their go-to person before they actually have that need?
I like that. But let me ask you this. That association that you make with knocking and restoration, I think most people do, right? Is it an association that we shouldn't make? Or is one that, like, do you think that, let me rephrase this. I feel in my experience, all the points that you said are fucking fantastic as far as developing a lifetime customer, offering all these different services to where knocking retail makes sense. But I think that's the vast minority of retail companies that actually do that.
I agree. But I think retail companies are marketed well. They have great strategies on how they sell. Their pitch is unique. I think that the ones that are very, very driven by retail have more financing programs to attract the retail audience. And I think the whole optic of the retail roofer, the heavy retail-driven roofer, is just much different. So all you're doing is adding to the things that already make you robust as a retail contractor when you say, you know what, I'm going to hire a couple boots on the ground to go knock and set up some inspections, set up some roof cleanings, set up some maintenance contracts, set up some whatever it may be. And you just do it in a very targeted approach when it's a retail one. Maybe you know that there's 2 neighborhoods in your area that are tract homes and they were built in this time frame and they're going to start getting roof replacements here soon, right? Or you've done 1 or 2 in that neighborhood, you realize they're due for it. So you go blast it and you door knock, and you, more so to leave flyers and hangers about, you know, roofs as low as $199 a month, right? And so knocking is still a relevant thing whether you are strictly a retail company. But odds are, if you're doing that much retail business, you have different branding and some different branding and marketing strategies than those that are predominantly restoration focused. So your audience, how they're getting to you and why they're coming to you is a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like typically what I see is you've got a very sharp divide, right? You've got the storm restoration guys, and then you've got the retail guys, and then underneath that you've got the door knockers. And under the retail side, you've got, I don't know what Ty Backer calls lead babies. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Ty Backer, right? Like, they can't operate. There's no way that they can survive unless you feed them every single lead. And, like, I'm of the mindset, like, be somewhere in the middle. For your guys knocking, give them a couple leads on a Monday to start the day off, right? So that, like, they can go visit people that want to fucking see them. Right?
Yeah, right?
Like, wouldn't that be nice just from, like, a psyche like, perspective? It's like, man, I actually get to see somebody who called and wanted to see me. And then on the retail side, it's like make them do activities that's going to generate opportunities for the company that you're not just handing them. The perks of working for a good company are that we're going to give you some leads. It's not an entitlement. Yeah. And I think the quicker that we get off the polar ends of that spectrum, you're going to see a lot more success for a lot more companies.
Well, what produces, you know, joy, satisfaction, dopamine, right? In an individual. It's not being beat down and losing all the time, right? So right, you know, right. there is a fine line between the whole concept of lead baby, like you said, right, where we're not really letting them spread their wings and fly, but also giving them some level of success, some joy of realizing, like, I work for a company who cares about me and I do get 2 leads a week, or I do get whatever it may be, to help continue to motivate it. And I think that in the roofing industry, I would agree, there's very polar opposites. You're either like, hey, our model's all this, and then our model's all door knock, right? Whatever it may be. It's all advertising, and we hand out the leads as they come in based on zones and sales and blah, 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 or everybody hunts for their foods, right? So they're either giving them guns or inspections, you know, like it seems to be like one or the other with most companies.
Yeah, usually the answer is closer to the middle than the ends. I think if you look at life and kind of everything that's encompassed within it, I think that for me personally, it's usually not on the polar sides of the spectrum, but I've been wrong before. So, anywho, what's more challenging? Taking somebody who only knows insurance and converting them into a retail sales rep, or taking retail sales reps and helping them understand the entire process of claims?
For the individual, I think it is more challenging to take somebody who is used to the claims environment and teaching them the retail model. Okay. I do think that is more difficult for the individual. I think that the complexities of a claim take some time to learn. All right. They take some time to learn and some examples and replication in there. But as far as changing the individual to better understand how and when to present retail or to move more towards the retail mindset, if someone has lived in that claims environment for the long time, I think that is a more challenging transition.
I think that's a great answer.
Just once I want somebody on a podcast to be like, God, that's maybe the worst answer I've ever heard.
I mean, I'm sure we could find somebody to contest, and we could have a spirited debate. I'll moderate it, and I think that might be forthcoming, because that sounds like a lot of fucking fun for me, and probably both parties involved outside of me. But there's a big distinction between the two, and I think both are challenging, right?
Yes.
Like, if you're going from a retail environment, and it's like, okay, I got to understand how to identify damage, how to prospect, right?
Right.
What that process looks like to cultivate those opportunities. If I'm door knocking, like, how do I grab their attention so it's not just fuck off immediately? How do I talk to an adjuster or a desk adjuster? Like, how do I understand building code and things that I'm going to leverage to my advantage when the insurance company undoubtedly is trying not to pay me? Because, like, that's what insurance companies do in general. It's not just roofing. They want to pay out as little as possible. So we've got to show them that we know why this needs to be replaced. Is that a fair assessment of the situation? Okay. And then the other side of it is like, you've got somebody who knows this process inside and out, but you're selling a $30,000 roof for $1,000 or $3,000. It's like, you can give me pretty much anything and tell me I could sell it for 90% less than retail price. And I mean, I think I'm going to sell a lot of it, right? And that's not to take away, because that other part of the process is fucking incredibly challenging, but it's a different type of sell. So yeah, I've never done either, right? Me personally, but I know through experience and getting opportunities for a couple of restoration contractors, like, you have to have a sales team built out in a very specific way in order to handle cold opportunities that are even if they're looking for a roof, it's a different conversation. It's a different approach. And if you're not set up for that, your marketing campaign is going to be an utter failure.
Yep. Because think of the buyers in the restoration world. You're knocking in either heavily condensed areas that have been affected by a storm, and there's multiple people knocking. So you're at some level competing just at the door, right? To take that business, capture that business. But I find the retail environment, when people are in the retail world and they're getting leads and they're getting bids, it's not often that a homeowner is getting a lead or a bid from one contractor, right? But you actually have interest in the product there, right? So where you're being competitive and where the competition lies and where the pitch has its challenges are slightly different. Not all the time, right? Like, I have seen ones where they called and just got, we're the first person you've called. We just want to know roughly what the price of a roof is, right? I'm not blanketing saying every scenario is like one or the other, but in general, when I've worked with retail contractors, I find that you're always up against another bid because they're pricing out a roof and they kind of have some intention or desire. I say desire. I don't think anybody's like super excited to buy a roof, but some intention to buy a roof, right?
Motivated.
And then there's that.
They get that letter of cancellation.
Motivated. But the little group that are maybe door knocking less affected areas, smaller storms, lower frequency, and that's the world I always like to live in from a restoration standpoint. That way I wasn't knocking for the 10th time compared to everybody else knocking. And I also wasn't strictly dealing with retail leads where I was showing up and I was one of the three people providing a bid. Could I operate in both environments? Sure. But I found a nice middle ground. It was like, where can I knock where there's low amounts of knocks? How can I use the leverage of discontinued shingles? How can I be a master right in this middle space here? And here's the beauty of knocking in those areas. you're usually on the edges, the peripherals, minor damage, lesser damage. So I'm setting myself up for opportunities to build lifetime customers because they have little or no damage, or they don't have a qualified claim. And then the qualified claims that I do work in that peripheral or edge or components, I know how to take them through the claim process. So I was setting up lifetime customers ready to make the retail buy if they were just interested in or sell if they were just interested in buying, or moving through the claim if the claim opportunity existed. And I think that middle ground of individuals are probably the easiest people to put in whatever mold they need to be moved into. Retail, all insurance, go knock a heavy storm, go work for a retail-only contractor. If you're used to kind of working that peripheral with the concept of I'm not only looking for damage, at the end of the day, how do I create a customer today? And with that mindset, what is the service that they could potentially need? Do I feel good selling that service, and how do I create a customer? Is it maintenance? Is it repairs? Is it claims? Is it an annual inspection? What is it that I can do? Like, well, you know what? We're probably, we just bought the house. We're going to be here the next 10 years, and we know we're going to have to do the roof at some point. Guess what they just told me, right? I know when the roof price is roughly going to double 4 to 5 years from now. So guess what I want to pitch to that person who just told me that they know their roof has to be replaced. They just bought the house and they want to be there a while, right? Why would I not try and close that? It's an opportunity, and I'm listening to the service that they're telling me in that moment. So, okay, great. Well, how soon did you anticipate changing the roof? Well, we were hoping to get a couple of years out of it. Well, let me explain to you the kind of forthcoming of what that looks like and see how I can help you. We can definitely prolong it for two more years because it looks like it's got some life left, but an inspection will justify some of that. I also think that the roof price is going to double in 4 to 5 years. I'm happy to show you some math on that. So you're kind of halfway through the doubling period in 2 years if you'd rather see that right now. If you want to know what the cost of the roof looks right now, but this all starts with just let me take a quick look. Do you mind if I hop up and take a quick look, right, and start developing that customer? And that's short. I mean, I'd have to be more pristine with that. But why would I ignore it and then go straight to this pitch? Well, the good news is a lot of people have damage when I know I'm in a low damage area. A lot of people are getting free roofs. A lot of people are getting roofs for just a deductible, right? Why don't I just pitch the one thing? Let me show you some level of service I can provide. Show you, build some trust. Let me get on the roof and inspect it and tell you, hey, you know what? This thing has no damage. Hey, this thing has a little bit. Hey, there's 2 maintenance issues. I actually have a pipe boot collar in my truck. I can fix this today for you. And then we can look at what it takes to replace this thing now versus replacing it in 2 years versus 5 years, right? But that's why I liked working that middle ground, because I was poised and ready to close whatever piece I needed to close. Didn't matter. Restoration, retail, insurance, like lifetime customer, service, doesn't matter. Like develop the customer.
Yeah, that's a really smart approach. You take, if you're pitching one way or the other, and let's say it's, 50% is your market one way, 50% of the other way, now you can service 100% of those people on the out on the peripheral or perimeter. That makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this. I'm ignorant to insurance restoration process as far as being a salesperson, but I would assume that in those areas there's less traffic, so there's probably less claims being submitted. Would that be? Is that an inaccurate assumption?
There's a couple of things driving a low claims environment. Low storms, so therefore there's not a lot of restoration contractors. So they just know there's not a lot of storm activity in those areas. So they either have low storm activity historically, or they've recently hit a downfall. Like Colorado hasn't had a ton of great storms or big storms in the past few years, so it's a lower storm market, but it used to be a big one. So contractors are kind of adapting. So the low storm frequency, those probably have more retail roofers because that's all that's existed. There hasn't been like big storms or consistent storms. The dying storm markets, the storm markets that are kind of fading away, have adapting contractors who are adjusting for that model, or the unknown storm market. There's areas of like the West Coast and California and stuff like that that have really good storms. They have really good wind damage. They're on hip roofs. It's just understanding the claims world and what that looks like out there. But it's a conundrum. Would you ruin the retail ripple and the retail world that you live in to perfect claims in an area where people are really not pursuing that? Or do you just continue to take the retail approach? So there's 3 different environments. There's the no storms ever really. the storms are dying out, or there's storms, but people just don't know that there's opportunity for storm damage claims. So that's where retail contractors, I think, are either well developed. In two of those scenarios, they should be well developed. In one of those scenarios, they're adapting. Yeah, I keep saying the wrong word.
That's okay. It's okay. You're doing great. So, I mean, I feel like if I own a roofing company and I'm in one of those unknown storm markets, right, where it's like there's a ton of damage, like, why wouldn't I adapt to that, right? Because like that's a huge opportunity, right? So what would be the downside of saying, you know what, we're going to pivot, and instead of being focused entirely on retail, I'm going to send two guys to a training class with John Senac and figure out insurance claims, or whomever, right? Like,
well, I appreciate the plug. I feel like that was, it's rather than me doing like a, shame plug for my own services or something like that. But the timing of your question is very interesting. So I got this call today, and I won't say what state it's from, but I got this call, yesterday. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, yesterday. I got this call yesterday. Great retail roofing company. They do metal. They actually have the machine to do their own, like they run the panels off themselves. So they're standing seam pedals. So they get the panels. So they get the metal. They do a lot of metal roofing, but there's still people who want to do shingles. And so they added shingles to their business to be competitive in the shingle market because they already had a good reputation. Well, over the past 5 years, their area has gotten popped with a couple decent storms, and they had out-of-towners come in and basically putting on roofs that eventually would have been theirs with little to no competition. So they called me because they want to learn what the claims world looks like, what the process looks like, the timelines, the steps, the inspection process, how to identify damage, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's a smart move. Are they going full storm model? No, they've got a great retail model. Were they tired of people coming in when there is a storm and taking stuff right out of their book? Yeah, they were not happy about that, right? So
yeah, I can see that pissing me off.
Right? Like, would you be like, what? What do you mean? You like our signs on every billboard in every corner, and you hire Joe Schmuck from another state who's never been here before, right? Because they know how to do that. They know how to go door knock that, and props to them for coming in and doing that. So this particular individual reached out to me to do that. So I think whether you are wanting to learn that and what that is like, I've done a lot of that for companies that are either GCs wanting to add a storm restoration part, or roofing companies that want to learn more about storm restoration, because I've sold that environment and am very, very good at the claims process. I feel like those programs have been really successful in that, and that's probably more of a private set if they're trying to make that learning curve or that transition, but they could come to a class. I have a few different classes that they could come to learn on that as well. The classes are going to be beneficial for anybody that's already in the restoration market. It's just the approach has changed so much over the past 2 years, and I've been very quick to test everything I do, measure the results of it, and then put it into models and training and programs. And then I run those programs as private trainings before I launch them as classes. So historically, the Discontinued Shingles Masterclass was a booming class. It taught people about all the discontinued shingles and how to analyze three things: compatibility, availability, and repairability on all these claims. So you could talk about whether something should be repaired versus replaced. That was a very, very knowledge-heavy, scratch-the-surface class. Now I've got the 2.0 class is what I'm calling it jokingly, and that name stuck. So don't call things a joke, it sticks. But that one's really all about documentation, and really why you should have what I call the decision-making inspection, right? The investigation that is going to dictate the entire process, and how you document during that investigation. The timing of it's going to be different state to state or for individual companies. And then how you present all that information, how you present damage, how you present the integrity of the roof, why it is or is not the things that are commonly denials, how you prepare for those denials, the no's you normally get, understanding the no's you normally get, and then presenting that information in there. So that class, I'm super excited to do. We actually just stopped the Discontinued Masterclass. It'll be online soon. But the 2.0 class is already full in Minnesota. It's almost full in Oklahoma, which is December 15th. And then we're going to launch a Chicago date and a Georgia date. And then that one's going to end up stopping because I have some other developmental things that we're doing with private trainings, other speaking opportunities, and I'm going to be really, really diving into a particular set that we're going to develop for NTS on some identification stuff and new technology. So the classes are limited. I will always keep the private trainings in the background, but the classes are limited on how long we'll run them. But thank you for asking about that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about those things, and I'm humbled. We had 150 people in a room in Columbus, Ohio last week, and I'm just so humbled to stand in those rooms and think, this is amazing. This is the turnout for people who want to learn this very, very focused thing. And some of those people that were in the room have already been through the private training and brought more of their reps to come see this in person just to hear it from me. But I know the results of it. And I think there's something to be said. There's a fine line between success and, like that track record of success and just boasting. And I see the results of the training, and to hear the feedback from people and know that it's working tells me keep doing that thing, because it is. And eventually enough of that means I need to have it online and available and subscribable and stuff, because it's making an impact on how quickly new and even veteran salespersons can change their success model in the claims environment.
Yeah, because you got to always be learning, right? Keep an open mind, be confident based on your past, but always pick up knowledge and tidbits along the way. And I love the idea of doing like hyper-focused shit, right? Because
yes.
I think that it's easy to talk surface level, broad strokes about a lot of things, and you could probably get decent attendance and whatever. But like if you can really drill in, it's like that's where the fucking value is, right? That's where you can't do a quick Google search and watch a YouTube video as easily to get that very honed in information about something that's so far down from the top of the funnel of information, where there's just so much value there, right? Yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. I like that. And congratulations, man. 150 people. That's a lot of people. Right? So that's quite the accomplishment, and I'm very happy for you. And I'm very happy for those that attended, because I'm sure they took away just a wealth of knowledge to help make them successful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Again, it's humbling. Like, it's crazy how humbling that is. Nashville had 125 people in the room. That's mind-blowing to me. But anyway.
Let me ask you this. So we talked about like the divide between like restoration and retail, right? What about those situations? Like, how can people take better advantage of opportunities where maybe there's a storm and maybe they get the roof replaced? But like in my mind, that doesn't have to stop there, right? What are the opportunities to upsell that individual into a better shingle or into additional components for the roofing system? Like, I feel like I don't see that talked about nearly as much. And for me, it seems like a ripe opportunity if I'm getting someone a $30,000 roof for $3,000. Like, hey, why don't we do this, right? And we can finance that, and it's only $89 a month.
Sure. So I think that is a missed opportunity, at least in the markets that I'm in or I've trained in or I see. But I have seen some cool programs. I've seen some cool programs where people always try and upsell the attic insulation if it needs to be done, special vents, solar vent components. There's small little things that if I did that on, 100 of my 200 jobs, what does that amount to from a revenue stream? And I think that, like, let's say I upsold 100 of my roofs to a premium shingle. Let's say that I put attic insulation in 100 of my 200 jobs, right? Like, how do those things start stacking to improve the overall business? It comes with a set process. You have to have a way and a framework for salespersons to be able to add those things and sell those things. And you have to get rid of the fear of losing the sale, because salespersons in the storm restoration oftentimes want to close the deal because they can get ink on the paper and a check today. And I understand that. I get that, right? It is a real thing, but the better you can become at the framework, then turning that into your sales process and narrative and everything you're going to do to be able to say things like, hey, Mike, just out of curiosity, when did you plan on replacing the roof absent of this storm, right? Who asked that question? How many salespersons do you think asked that question, right? Because what's the answer going to be? I hadn't thought about it before. But what if that homeowner says, we were thinking we probably had 2 to 3 years left. Okay. So we've obviously deferred that investment. Is there other things that you would like to invest in now that this project is 2 to 3 years ahead, but 90% cheaper that we could go ahead and take care of now? The most common ones are people in that situation often go to an upgraded shingle for these factors and improve their overall attic insulation to get the best life out of that shingle and overall performance, right? So, but there's so many little framework things that you can build in your training model to be able to set people up with questions like that, to be able to trigger those things in that moment, in that current sale, in that existing sale, that the opportunity that's really missed is having a set process on how do you add business revenue, other services that will benefit you across the board. You're not going to add a service if it's going to affect your profit line, right? Like, I don't want to go from my roofing margin, add something else, and then because it's so cost heavy, it affects my overall gross profit. But when you evaluate those things and see what you can add, okay, go do that thing. But have your salespersons educated, and they get through that first 90 days, or they get through that first 2 to 6 transactions, whatever it is. Hey, now I want to teach you how to turn your transactions into multiple transactions, into a bigger sale, into a better service for the homeowner.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I'll add to that, like, both of us have hit on processes. Shout out to Adam San. But, like, here's the thing, guys. Like, you can't just develop a process and then not manage your people or have your sales team leader manage the team. Like, you have to check in on them to make sure that they're doing these processes. And then within that, you're going to find other opportunities to coach and make your team better as you guys talk through the situations that they're seeing, the wins they're having, whatever L's they're taking. Why are these things happening? So you can coach and develop. And typically the unintended consequence will be able to isolate other things outside of just that process that are going to help make your reps stronger and more productive and ultimately probably happier, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Indeed. There has to be something to keep pulse of things, because you're always looking at your process and then measuring the results of that process. And then if you're not setting yourself up to check the pulse of that, then you're probably reactive to your results. You see the results change. You're like, hey, why'd this get better? Oh, we got better at this process. Or we added this thing, or we changed this thing. Hey, why did this get worse? Well, where's the process breaking down? What are we missing, right? I'd rather be checking the pulse than waiting for something feeding back from the results to tell me I need to investigate.
That's some wise shit right there, bro. Listen, I need something clickbaity for my next piece of content here. So what's one thing that sales reps need to stop doing yesterday?
From a selling standpoint, not relevant to a restoration standpoint, I assume.
Sure.
Oh man, there's a handful of things we could discuss here. This is stop selling selfishly. All right. And I think it happens. We fall victim to it. Again, it kind of goes back to wanting to sign today, cash the check tomorrow. I heard this from a very, very good person in the industry, and I'm going to say this phrase, and obviously I think the people watching your show aren't going to mind the cussing. So someone said, fuck Friday, focus on 40. All right. Salespersons need to stop focusing on Friday and look at the longevity of things. Stop selling selfishly. Start selling with an act of service, and you will find the growth to that is exponential. What you pay attention to is far greater. What you're hearing from your homeowner is far greater. Stop selling selfishly. It's implicit that you are doing the sales job to make money. So the second you realize that and stop making it all about the money and more about you, the development, the homeowner, the service they need, and a well-rounded look at things, you will have more longevity, better experience, and better overall performance in this industry when you stop selling selfishly. Pay attention to the service your homeowners need.
With a servant's heart, folks. You heard it here first with John Senac. Dude, I couldn't be more grateful for you stopping by, sharing tons of wisdom with the audience. Very, very appreciative, man. If anyone out there is interested, as you should be, in checking out the 2.0 classes that you're offering and are filling up fast, what's the best way for them to enroll?
I'm all social media. I am Instagram, Facebook, my Facebook group, TikTok, and every single thing I have, YouTube, everything is John the Roof Pro. So if you go to @John the Roof Pro for Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everything is all very, very consistent, very simple for you. And then I do have them in the Name That Roofing, Siding, and More Facebook group. I will have the website launch. It's going to be very basic. It's going to be set for people to enroll. That will launch soon. But if you are looking for those things, you can find them through the post, through the enrollment form, through the Google Sheet. Like, there's a lot of ways. You just got to find me on Instagram or Facebook. That's the best way to do it, and get to those classes or look at the post. And if you need to, shoot me a message and I will get back to you with the details.
Perfect, man. Well, again, I appreciate you. And great job with the branding. Be clear, be concise, be consistent. You got the same handle across all platforms. Make it real easy for people. And I'm just going to let you know, we're going to do a little foreshadowing for the audience. John's going to be back on the show soon because we ran out of time today, but we got a ton of shit more to talk about. So
I'm looking forward to it. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to just come on and chat and really engage in just fun conversation. And for everybody who thought they were listening to a podcast and we were today, I'm not even sorry, because we got to talk about sales stuff. I'm sure we'll get to dive into some of my geeky stuff, and there's plenty of ways you can find the geeky stuff. This was an off-topic podcast for me, and I'm so appreciative that you even took the time and put an ear to this, and I hope that it changed something in you as an owner that you may want to look into or consider, or as a salesperson that you may want to consider. Hint, hint, never stop growing the skill set. But Michael, thank you so much for having me on and talking on some different topics. I really appreciate it.
yeah, no doubt, brother. Variety is the spice of life, so happy I could keep it vast and full of variety for you. To the audience, we appreciate it as well. Wouldn't be doing any of this without you guys. You're great. You're the best.